the CEO and founder of TechScreen. We're the world's only SaaS product that lets a recruiter conduct, score, and document a detailed interview of an IT candidate without needing to know the underlying content. But what it also does, and it's not as obvious, we actually help the recruiter elevate their level of engagement with hiring managers so clients can identify talent earlier in the process. So the whole HR tech space is falling all over themselves to try to inject AI into all of their products. And there's a whole bunch of different, whether it's ATSs or sourcing tools or vetting tools, they're all trying to figure out how to get AI and machine learning into their products. But all of this amazing technical innovation still can't prevent headlines like this. Indeed.com did a study that shows US companies burn $160 billion a year because of the lost productivity of empty seats. And when you think about that, most of it has to do with the beginning part of the interview funnel. Now, Quora had posted this question, why is it so hard for software engineers to connect with recruiters? And there were a ton of responses, but this one stood out. By understanding technology better, recruiters would add more value to the process. And this is from John Bishke, who is the CEO and founder of Intello, one of the leading sourcing tools. So this is someone who understands the space intimately. So JobVite is an ATS vendor that had done a huge study, 10 million job applications, to find out what are the metrics within the hiring process. And one of the metrics they uncovered was that the average interview to offer ratio was 17%, which is pretty disappointing. We had a client in Burlington who had their recruiters screen 155 software engineers, which led to managers doing 40 formal interviews, and they made 28 offers for a 70% interview to offer ratio. And because the recruiters worked with the engineering team to create the custom interviews, 3 of their teams skip manager phone screens if the candidate gets a 75 or better. Now, we actually just last month had an amazing success story working with GoDaddy in the Cambridge office. They had 3 positions that had been open since last November, and by creating custom interviews with their engineering team, recruiters were able to screen 31 candidates technically, and we were able to reject 14 of them for a knockout ratio of 45%, and the first hire came in 13 days. So let me show you how we actually did it. So it's easy to create a customized interview. When you think about the hiring process, usually in a job intake call, the manager just throws the dry job description at the recruiter, and they look at what buzzwords should be there, and then they go try to recruit. But think about the level of engagement when the hiring manager is actually involved and is able to pick the questions in the interview. Now, by doing this, think about this. A hiring manager gets a recommendation from one of their friends, and the resume is average, but the referrer says, this candidate's the best troubleshooter I've ever worked with. You know the manager is not only going to talk to that person, they're probably going to prioritize it. So what our tool does is you can sit there and you can pick your skill, pick your level, and load the questions. So the manager is actually cherry picking questions that relate to their specific deliverables. And so when the recruiter does the interview, they're interviewing it against the set of standards that the manager actually helped define. And so the manager is invested in the process. And now they're going to be much more likely to want to actually interview a candidate. And if they can't find the question in the library, they can just add their own. They can put their own question, put down what they regard as an acceptable answer, and now they're going to be putting up an interview that they would do themselves if they actually had the time. And once you create a custom question, it actually gets stored in your private library of custom questions that you can reuse and add to any future interview. Let me just click through here. There's a lot of latency between the click and the actual. And so when you create the interview, it lands right on your landing page, so you can reuse that on an unlimited basis. So when you think about, if you could actually present the report, the manager gets to see the score out of 100, because the tool is going to help you extract salient details of the interview you could present, and then the manager gets to see the result of how the candidate actually did on an interview they helped create. So if you could provide this level of custom screening for your hiring managers, is there a reason you wouldn't? And so I think it's time to get smarter about hiring IT people. And now with TechScreen, you can. Questions? Yes?
How is this different from other competition like HackerRank?
Great question. Well, okay, so HackerRank, so there's two types of technical evaluation tools. There's a coding exercise like HackerRank, Codility Litmus, or the self-paced multiple choice like BrainBench and TechCheck and eSkill. Those are all, you send a link to the candidate, all right, and then the recruiting process stops. And you have to wait for them to get around to take the test. Hopefully they don't cheat. But here, because the recruiter is actually conducting the interview, they're in control of the recruiting process. They're elevating their level of engagement with both the recruiter, the candidate, as well as the manager. There's no other tool that empowers the recruiter to actually be the proxy for the hiring manager to actually conduct the interview. Yes?
So just two questions.
Yeah.
One is about the intangibles, because obviously you miss out some really good candidates for some of those intangibles.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one, is there a legal liability when you kind of categorize a person and say they're not qualified for this job based on the starting questions?
No, because, well, first of all, companies are asking questions of candidates all the time, but they just don't do it at scale because they can't have, talk to 300 candidates who might wish to work there. And because this isn't meant to make the hiring decision, this is meant to get to the short list of candidates who's actually worthy of further inclusion in the process. And so by arming the recruiter with the ability to do the surrogate for the hiring manager phone screen on the first phone call, you're just identifying the worthy talent earlier in the pipeline. In fact, from a legal perspective, this is actually beneficial because since every candidate for a given position gets the same batch of questions, it's inherently OFCCP compliant by default. Questions? No?
Let's take it a little further, though. Can you make any effort to go after some of the intangibles as well?
Well, this is meant to, well, first of all, the recruiters are already able to do that sort of stuff with behavioral-based interviewing, but this is the missing piece, the ability to find out from a technical perspective which of the people actually worth further consideration. They do that on their own anyways. That's their expertise. One more questions? Yes?
So you say that the system helps the recruiter to create customized interview questions?
Yep.
So how is it different if the recruiter create their own customized question by themselves without going through your system? So what makes, like, for example, if I'm a recruiter,
Yep.
and then I create my own customized interview question,
Okay.
what makes
Okay, so first of all, our algorithm is scoring the quality of the answer, both from a content perspective as well as how the efficacy of the delivery. Okay, so unless you have some ability to track the result and provide a score, I mean, you just put in questions in an Excel spreadsheet. And how is it you're going to determine how well they did empirically, and then how do you present that to the manager? Yes? I'm sorry?
How are the answers documented?
So it's going to be on the recruiter's screen, and we present the question and the answer content in such a way that, in fact, it's part of our patent, where we shepherd the recruiter through understanding and interpreting the technical response and be able to score for the content accuracy as well as providing a rating on how effectively they delivered their answer. Yes?
Have you thought about the other way around? This being used by the candidate itself to qualify, to pre-qualify to jobs that are available?
It's been a big problem for candidates who game the system and cheat, and it's one of the biggest problems that the other testing tools have is that they have to proctor the integrity. And there are some, in fact, my partner, to his horror, discovered one of them. He was just looking around, and it said, check this box, and you agree to let us take over your webcam and track your keystrokes. Now, I don't know how many developers in the room, but they're a fairly suspicious population. And they'll run if they think that their keystrokes are being tracked and their webcam is turned on.
So are recruiters doing this with a phone interview?
Yep.
And so they have to transcribe what the candidates are saying?
So our content allows them to basically, with checkboxes, so the questions are there and the answers are there, and we have a proprietary way of helping them understand the answer without knowing, like, what Java Virtual Machine is and how it works.
But does the candidate answer actually get into your system somehow?
Nope, the recruiter is just listening to the response, and they're just keeping up and tracking and scoring individual questions, and our algorithm provides a scoring based on the content accuracy as well as the efficacy of the delivery.
Thank you.
Yep. All right.